Good morning. Calling to order the Committee on Transportation here in the Hawaii State Legislature in the House of Representatives. Today is Tuesday, February 11, 2025. We are calling to order the 9:30 committee hearing. We are starting today at 9:36 here at the Hawaii State Capitol in room 430. And just some quick housekeeping orders before we get underway with our agenda. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, in the case that we need to institute a time limit, it will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. For folks testifying on measures, please be mindful that other folks may want to testify as well. Because we're a morning hearing, we must adjourn prior to the floor session, and in the case that not all testifiers have had the opportunity to testify, in that event, please know your written testimony will be considered by the committee and as practiced by both the Housing and Transportation committees. All testimony is made public to members and the public by 5 p.m. before the hearing. So please know that everyone has had the opportunity to review your comments. For the folks on Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify. And our Zoom chat function only allows tech staff to communicate with you folks, and please only use it for tech issues. If you're disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. In the event of a network failure, we may need to reschedule, and a hearing or schedule will be made for decision-making and properly noticed. Please avoid any trademark or copyrighted images, and please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior is grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin, and that is how we're going to get underway. All right, let's begin. With our first measure this morning, HB 1154, relating to Central Services Assessments, amends the transfer of funds for Central Service expenses from the State Highway Fund, Airport Revenue Fund, and Harbor Special Fund by limiting the deduction to 5% of all receipts and deposits in the fund, or $5 million, whichever is less, and creating a process to deduct additional amounts based on the Consumer Price Index. Vice Chair for testimony.
Department of Transportation in support.
Thank you.
Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Is there anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? All right, seeing none, we will go to the next measure on the agenda, HB 1164, relating to highway revenue bonds. It restores the revenue bond authorization for the Department of Transportation to issue highway revenue bonds for highway capital improvement projects authorized in Act 164, Session Laws of Hawaii 2023, as amended by Act 230, Session Laws of Hawaii 2024, effective upon approval. Vice Chair for testimony.
Department of Transportation in support.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
All right. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, move on to our next agenda item, HB 1286, relating to pedestrian safety. Prohibits pedestrians from walking along the roadway of an interstate highway, an auxiliary interstate highway, or certain state highways except while conducting authorized first responder duties or highway maintenance duties. Vice Chair for testimony.
Department of Transportation in support. Ulupono Initiative offering comments. Larry Veray, individual in support. And is there anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, move on to our next measure, HB 1162, relating to motorcycle instruction permits. Starting July 1, 2026, requires all applicants for a motorcycle instruction permit to successfully complete a basic motorcycle rider course approved by the Department of Transportation before becoming eligible for permit. Vice Chair for testimony.
Department of Transportation in support. Victor Ramos, individual in opposition. Is there anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
Okay, members, any questions? Seeing none, move on to the next agenda item, HB 537, relating to two-wheel motorized vehicles. Requires all operators and passengers of two-wheel motorized vehicles to wear safety helmets and securely fasten chin straps while operating two-wheel motorized vehicles on highways, streets, roadways, or any other public property in the state. Defines two-wheel motorized vehicles. Vice Chair for testimony.
Department of Transportation in support.
Thank you.
AAA Hawaii in support. Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety in Support on Zoom. And Victor K. Ramos, individual in opposition. Is there anyone else in? Oh,
Advocates for Highway Auto Safety on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Omar Masood. I'm the Director of State Government Relations for Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Advocates is an alliance of consumer, medical, public health, law enforcement, safety groups, insurance companies, and agents working to improve roadway safety. We appreciate the opportunity to testify. We strongly support HB 537 to require all riders of two-wheeled motorized vehicles to utilize the life-saving protection of helmets. Sadly, 2022 set another record for motorcyclist fatalities in the U.S. Motorcycle riders are nearly 28 times more likely to die in a crash than passenger vehicle occupants. On Hawaii roadways, 33 motorcyclists lost their lives in 2022, and 68% were not wearing a helmet when use was known. In addition to the physical and emotional toll on Hawaii families, motor vehicle crashes cost the state $580 million annually, according to a 2019 analysis. Updating for inflation only, this would be $711 million in 2024 dollars. Helmets are an essential safety tool. Helmets reduce the risk of head injury by 69% and the risk of death by 42%. The NHTSA has estimated the helmets to be 37% effective, preventing fatalities in drivers, and 41% effective for passengers. Laws requiring all riders to wear a helmet are effective and life-saving. In states with all-rider helmet laws, use was 83% compared to just 66% in states without such a law. A recent study calculated that between 1976 and 2022, over 22,000 additional lives could have been saved if all states had all-rider motorcycle helmet laws. Research, data, and experience will support the need for all-rider motorcycle helmet laws to prevent more tragic deaths, lifelong and debilitating injuries, catastrophic costs, and preventable anguish for Hawaii families and visitors. We urge a favorable vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Victor K. Ramos, individual in opposition. And is there anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, move on to our next measure, HB 387, relating to highway safety. Amends the offense of negligent injury in the first degree to include injuries negligently inflicted by intoxicated drivers. Vice Chair for testimony.
Office of the Public Defender in opposition.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Sonny Gannon, Deputy Public Defender. I'll be real brief. We believe this already exists as a crime. It is well defined as a Class C felony, and this would cause much confusion in the courts.
Thank you, Sunny.
Department of Transportation in support.
Thank you.
Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. This is not currently punished adequately in the criminal law, and let me explain. Right now, you can think of drunk driving as occurring in three different categories. First, you have the category of people who are driving drunk. Those people are currently prosecuted with a petty misdemeanor. Second, you have people who cause collisions. Those people can be additionally charged with inattention to driving. Third, you have people who hurt people, probably the most dangerous class of drunk drivers out there. Right now, unless they cause serious or substantial bodily injury, meaning unless that person is almost dying or unless they've caused certain types of injuries like a broken bone or a major laceration, that law treats them just like every other drunk driver. What we would do here is essentially, if your negligence is caused by alcohol and you hurt someone, that should be treated as a felony. Thank you.
Thank you.
County of Hawaii Office of the Prosecuting Attorney in support. And County of Kauai Office of the Prosecuting Attorney in support. Is there anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
Okay, thank you. Question for City and County of Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I think I don't want to assume, but I will ask. In the case of instances and things that you have taken to trial, would you potentially have data that would have shown the cases that you take to trial that could have constituted as potentially an upgraded felony in this capacity?
So I don't have exact numbers. I do know that they came out of our office's negligent homicide unit, which handles these. And particularly what the prosecutor who handled those mentioned was that in cases where the injury doesn't rise to the level of substantial bodily injury, so that can be massive bruising, right? A pedestrian's hit and they're bruised all over, but luckily they didn't break a bone. I've also had cases in the district court. I particularly remember one where there was a couple in Kalihi who was walking hand in hand across the road. Drunk driver hit them. Another important point is because that was in district court, this is being handled with all the other drunk driving cases. The guy who got pulled over for a safety check violation and failed the SFST. The courts simply don't have the time to handle the restitution hearing for that case, which was obviously massive. The circuit courts would have a better job handling that sort of inquiry, and that's another reason why we would want this.
Yeah, I hear you. If there's a way that you could potentially farm that data, and if you'd be willing to send it to my office so I could distribute to members.
Of course. I'll talk to DPA Chung Cheng, who handles these
Please.
cases. Yeah.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay. Moving on to the next measure, HB 1084, relating to use of intoxicants while operating a vehicle, lowers the blood alcohol content threshold for driving while under the influence from alcohol from 0.08 to 0.05 more grams of alcohol to reduce impaired driving and fatal crashes. Before we begin testimony, I do want to note that I have both before us HB 1084 and HB 1387, and they pretty much mirror each other except for one part in the bill. So I understand that you may have you registered to testify for both, and depending how the testimony goes, I don't want you folks to have to put yourself through two testimonies on the same measure. So please note that if you want to testify on both and your first testimony is applicable to both measures, totally fine. I don't want to subject you folks to this. Don't feel like you need to tell your story twice. But I did get to read a lot of your folks' written testimony, so I do appreciate y'all coming out. So under that guys, Vice Chair for testimony.
Department of Transportation in support.
Thank you.
Office of the Public Defender in opposition.
In opposition.
Thank you, Sunny.
Hawaii Police Department in support. Hawaii State Department of Health in support. On Zoom.
Yeah, on Zoom. Not on Zoom.
Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu.
Thank you.
County of Hawaii Office of the Prosecuting Attorney in support. On Zoom.
Not on Zoom.
Okay. Maui County Department of the Prosecuting Attorney in support. Honolulu Police Department in support. HSAC Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition in support. AAA Hawaii in support. Hina Mauka in support. Mothers Against Drunk Driving Hawaii in support.
Good morning, Chair Keela, Vice Chair Grandinetti, and members of the committee. My name is McKenna Young with Mothers Against Drunk Driving Hawaii, and I'm here today in strong support of HB 1084. The primary reason to support this bill is simple. It will save lives. Extensive research, including from the National Transportation Safety Board, shows that lowering the BAC reduces impaired driving and fatal crashes. When Utah became the first state to implement a .05 BAC law in 2018, opponents argued it would hurt alcohol sales. Since the law took effect, alcohol sales in Utah have actually increased by 28%. Clearly, this policy does not harm businesses. It simply makes roads safer. Please understand that lowering the BAC limit to .05 is not about drinking. It is about separating drinking from driving. This legislation aims to change our culture, to encourage people to pause and think before getting behind the wheel, and to make responsible choices like planning ahead for a safe ride home. Hawaii has an opportunity to lead the nation in traffic safety by following Utah's example. While Utah remains the only state with a .05 BAC limit, 6 other states are actively considering similar legislation this session, and over 100 countries already have a .05 BAC or lower. By passing this bill, Hawaii can set the standard and demonstrate our commitment to protecting our communities. It is time we join the majority of the world's population already subject to .05 or lower. I also want to address a common misconception. This law will not change how law enforcement operates. Drivers are not pulled over for no reason. They are stopped because they are swerving, running a red light, or displaying other signs of impaired driving. If an officer stops a driver and progresses through a field sobriety test, reading of rights, and a breathalyzer, then that individual should not be on the road. Lowering the BAC to .05 simply ensures that drivers who are already demonstrating impairment are held accountable at a safer threshold. Finally, this bill is not just about policy, it is about people. It is about families who have lost loved ones to impaired drivers, victims whose lives have been changed forever, and communities left grieving preventable tragedies. By passing HB 1084, we have the power to spare families from heartbreak, honor the memory of those who should still be with us today, and lead the nation in the fight against drunk driving. I urge you to stand with the victims, their families, and all those committed to safer roads. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, McKenna.
Office of the Governor in support on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Will Kane, Office of the Governor. I'll stand on my written testimony in support for both HB 1084 and HB 1387. And I appreciate this committee taking this action up, and I'm here to answer any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you, Will. And I'm so sorry. I did want to, let me clarify that. You folks don't have to stand on your testimony, but if you want to say your testimony is applicable to both measures, I just don't want you folks having to go through it twice. So please feel free, like you don't have to stand on it. I know you folks did come out today, so I do want to clarify that. So my apologies if that was a misconception.
Hawaii Public Health Institute in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Rick Collins. I am with the Hawaii Public Health Institute, and we are also have a program called the Hawaii Alcohol Policy Alliance under the Hawaii Public Health Institute that I represent here today. I just want to we stand in support of both measures. I just want to note a few points. One is in your 1387, Section 9, that's added there. We just ask that any repeal in that 2028 law does not include the repeal of a .05, should that go through. The other thing that I want to just note are the economics of .05. All the data that we can find in European countries, including the data that's come out of Utah, is that there's no economic downturn in alcohol sales. In fact, Utah's alcohol sales have gone up like 28% since the .05, so we don't believe that it's going to impact the economy or the restaurant and tourism industry. The other thing I just want to note is that we also don't have any data to support arrests going up for this. When an officer pulls you over, and I know firsthand because I've actually gone through a field sobriety test, they don't make you blow into a device to measure your BAC. They pull you over because they see some evidence of swerving or some evidence of impairment, and they put you through a field sobriety test initially. And so, and that field sobriety test is still calculated at .08 nationally. And so we don't believe that there's any evidence to support that arrests will go up as well. Thank you. I'm here for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Rick.
Malahanai Pua in support. Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety in support on Zoom.
Thanks again, Chair and Vice Chair. Advocate strongly supports measures to lower the state's BAC limit while driving to 0.05%, including SB 1403/HB 1084 and SB 1643 and HB 1387. At 0.05, a person exhibits reduced coordination, decreased ability to track moving objects, difficulty steering, and diminished response to emergency situations. In addition to the horrific annual toll of over 13,500 deaths, drunk driving imposes an economic burden of $296 billion. This amounts to each person living in the U.S. essentially paying an annual drunk driving crash tax of nearly $900. It also impacts businesses and costs employers $8 billion, with 81% of that involving crashes while off the job. 0.05% BAC is a proven life-saving solution effectively used worldwide, but underused in the U.S. More than 100 countries have 0.05% or lower limits. Alcohol consumption in many of these countries is as much or more than in the United States, but drunk driving is much less because lower limits act as a broad deterrent. The national policy change to 0.5% BAC saved approximately 25,000 lives between 1983 and 2014 alone. Action is sorely needed. In 2022, there were 116 fatalities on state roads, and 32% of those involved drunk driving. Drunk driving is a deadly and costly threat to Hawaii residents and visitors. Advancing policy to lower the BAC limit to 0.5% will address this preventable danger, keep families whole. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Coalition for a Drug-Free Hawaii in support. Hawaii Alcohol Policy Alliance in support on Zoom.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair. I'm Cynthia Okazaki, and I stand on my written testimony and also on all the testimonies of previous speakers, too. And just to emphasize that, this is for everyone. Safety on the highway is for everyone, not just those people who get into accidents. But it's a peace of mind, and that you don't have to, you can drink all you want, but just don't drive. Thank you for considering my testimony.
Thank you.
Hawaii Bicycling League in support. House of Worship Lighthouse Church in support. Hawaii County Council in support. Chanda Park, individual in support on Zoom. Camelin Pola, individual in support. Pure Jiu-Jitsu in support. Maikai Cleaning Services in support. And we have 24 individuals in support. Is there anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
Yeah, please come to the podium and just state your name for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Brittany Cass with Bold Like Brit. I just want you to imagine just for a second that you're driving home after a long day. While you drive, you're talking to the most important person in your life. And then in an instant, without warning, a car enters the highway going the wrong way and hits you head on. The most important person in your life then hears you let out an unforgettable scream and hears a shattering of glass and crunching of metal. Minutes go by, and that most important person in your world is still on the phone, desperately trying to get a response from you, as all they hear is your breathing getting fainter and fainter. My name is Brittany Cass, and I'm here to tell you that that was my reality. I became a victim of a drunk driving reckless choice, as my husband had the misfortune of listening to me almost die. Paramedics and EMTs rushed to my aid, and it was only then that the severity of my injuries was inventoried. My body was now engulfed in the entire front end of the car, and both of my femurs were visibly sticking out of my body. My seatbelt had locked across my abdomen, and my abdomen was filling up with blood. Because of someone's choice to get behind the wheel of a car, I shattered my right knee, broke both my femurs, my left hip, my tailbone, parts of my back, was cut open vertically to stop and find the bleed, which then resulted in parts of my small intestines removed. I had a TBI and multiple mini strokes. Here's a photo of me in that coma. I then was left in a coma for 6 days, while the most important person in my life had to go home and tell our 3 young children why someone would choose to do this. It's been 3 years since my crash, and I've undergone 10 grueling surgeries. I have scars plastered all over my body as a constant reminder of what happened to me. I've spent thousands of hours in physical therapy and occupational therapy, learning how to sit up more than 30 degrees, how to use the restroom, how to navigate life in a wheelchair, how to put weight through my legs, and how to walk up to this podium. While I'm humbled for the opportunity to share a sliver of my story as a survivor, I feel the responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless, and that is why Bold Like Brit is here in support of both bills. Bold Like Brit is a nonprofit dedicated to educate our community so no one else has to go through what my family has had to go through. So I ask you to think of the most important person in your life. Would you want them to have to go through this? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brent, and thank you just for being here today. Can you make sure when we adjourn or before that you can submit your written testimony to our committee clerk so that it can be included in the testimony file, please? Thank you. Okay. Anyone else online or in person like to testify on the measure? Thank you. Please come forward and say your name for the record, please.
I'm Jennifer Gilman, and first I really want to thank you for being patient with my dog. He's training to be my service dog because I have really severe PTSD after my son was killed. I am going to refrain from telling you the story of how the drunk driver continued on with my son's moped underneath his truck for 2 miles. I'm not going to tell you the story because I can't handle it. Every time I come out and I talk about this stuff, for days afterwards, the bruise that's left behind. It's nearly impossible to get out of bed. My son was 22 and 13 days old. He would be 25 this month. I'm celebrating his birthday by hanging out with some of his friends. He used to be an ice hockey player. We're gonna all wear his jerseys and we're gonna go and we're gonna ice skate. I can't be anywhere near the town that he was raised in because everywhere I go, there's memories. It's not a victimless crime, drinking and driving. The person who dies isn't the only victim. I lost my job. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I used to be a DUI counselor. My son, when he went to college, he chose not to have a car because he didn't want to be put in this position. And yet he was taken out by someone who just didn't care. It wasn't going to happen to him. I really strongly believe if the limit were lowered, fewer people would be in a position like me. People just think, it's no big deal, it's 0.08. It's always been 0.08. I've been pulled over before, I know this. I know what it feels like to be 0.08. 0.05 is common sense. It'll make people stop. It's so easy now with Uber. People don't have to drink and drive. Designated drivers, yes, they help. But a lot of times people plan going in there being the designated driver and they become a drinker. And maybe it's 1 or 2 and they, again, get over 0.08. I don't want any of you guys to ever have to experience what I've had to experience. Because I have a before and after life. And this scar that's never going to heal for me. So please, please consider making this monumental change so that you don't have to go through this with any loved one. Thank you, and thank you for being patient with us.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for being here.
Anyone else in person or on Zoom who'd like to testify?
Please come forward and say your name into the podium, please.
Good morning, Chair Keela, Vice Chair Grandinetti. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm John Valera of the Department of Health, Alcohol, Drug Abuse Division. I just wanted to just stand on our remarks in strong support of this bill. We did offer for HB 1084 an amendment, so that's in our prepared remarks.
Yes.
So will you be standing by for any questions?
Thank you.
You very much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else online or in person like to testify on the measure before us? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Okay, excuse me. We'll go on to our next measure. Same thing that stands. I understand they're duplicative. So if you would like to testify again or just stand on your written testimony or provide a whole new testimony, that's totally fine. So we'll go to HB 1387 relating to use of toxicants while operating a vehicle, lowers the blood alcohol content threshold for driving under the influence of an intoxicant. Vice Chair for testimony.
Department of Transportation in support. Hawaii Police Department in support. Office of the Public Defender in opposition. Hawaii State Department of Health in support on Zoom.
Thank you.
Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu in support. County of Hawaii Office of the Prosecuting Attorney in support on Zoom. Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition in support. AAA Hawaii in support. Hina Mauka in support. Mothers Against Drunk Driving Hawaii in support.
That stands in support.
Thank you.
Office of the Governor in support on Zoom. Pro Arts Playhouse Hawaii in support. Lokahi Treatment Centers in support. National Transportation Safety Board in support on Zoom. Hawaii Public Health Institute in support.
Chair,
Oh,
Chair,
sorry.
on behalf of NTSB.
Hi. Okay. Sorry. Please say your name for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Tom Chapman, and I have the honor of serving
as the 46th member of the National Transportation Safety Board. And thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm here in support of both House Bills 1387 and 1084. These important bills, as you know, would lower the state's per se impairment threshold from 0.08 to 0.05. Since 2013, the NTSB has recommended that states establish a per se limit of 0.05 or lower. In 2018, as has been testified, Utah became the first state to do so and subsequently saw reductions in both its fatal crash and fatality rates relative to the rest of the United States. Passage of 0.05 legislation in Hawaii would make it the second state to embrace a change that will save lives and cut the number of senseless and completely avoidable crashes. In 2022, there were a staggering 13,524 alcohol-impaired driving fatalities in the United States. That is the highest number since 2008, and it represents 32% of all traffic fatalities in 2022. In Hawaii alone, alcohol-impaired driving crashes killed 392 people in the 10-year period between 2012 and 2022. Various countermeasures to combat alcohol-impaired driving have been tried over the years, and some have made a significant difference. Still, the number of crashes and deaths remains stubbornly high. More needs to be done, and research suggests that lowering the legal BAC limit to 0.05 will reduce fatal alcohol-related crashes by an estimated 11%. More than 100 countries have established BAC limits of 0.05 to reduce alcohol-related crashes, so the benefits of lower BAC limits are very well documented. Because we know it works, we at the NTSB strongly support legislation that will lower the legal BAC per se limit to 0.05. Addressing impaired driving on America's roads requires bold leadership. We applaud the bill sponsors and all of you as lawmakers for considering this key step. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
Hawaii Public Health Institute in support.
Thank you.
Mala Hanai Pua in support. Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety in support on Zoom.
Thank you. I'll stand by my previous testimony as these bills are substantially the same.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Coalition for a Drug-Free Hawaii in support. Hawaii Bicycling League in support. Hawaii Alcohol Policy Alliance in support on Zoom. And we have 27 additional individuals in support. Is there anyone else in person or online who'd like to testify?
Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, we will recess. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Reconvening the 9:30 AM agenda here on the Committee on Transportation in the House of Representatives for decision-making. I do just want to thank everyone for coming out to testify today, and I will go through each bill to kind of explain what we are going to be doing. So our first bill, HB 1154, relating to social services assessments, we're going to adopt the HD1. For this measure, we'll just do technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and we will defect the effective date to July 1st, 3000. Members, questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on HB 1154, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Cochran, excused. Representative Evslin.
Aye.
Representative Kitagawa. Aye. Representative La Chica.
Aye.
Representative Miyake.
Aye.
Representative Muraoka. Aye. Representative Perrick, excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. HB 1164 relating to highway revenue bonds. We're going to adopt the HD1 and we'll do tech amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. And we're going to defect the effective date July 1st, 3000. There was some issues going on between DNF and DOT. That's why the measure was needed. And I will note that DOT will work further with the Finance Committee to determine the next best steps on this measure. All right. Vice Chair for the, members, questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on HB 1164, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Cochran and the presence of Representative Perrick. Are there any representatives voting no? Any voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, HB 1286 relating to pedestrian safety. We'll adopt the HD1. We'll defect the effective date to July 1st, 3000. And I do want to note in the committee report, the testimony provided by Ulupono regarding some of their concerns. I know some of these measures have good intent, and oftentimes a good intent, there may be unintended consequences. But at this time, I think we'll note in the committee report for further discussion and the next committee. So, members, questions, comments, or concerns? Rep. Evson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be voting with reservations just based on the concerns from Ulupono and the impact that this could have on more rural communities. I think they called out Hanalei as an example where the highway goes right through the middle of town. There are no sidewalks. So I certainly appreciate and understand the intent. But I think there's a lot of instances where highways are going through towns without adequate pedestrian facilities, and this needs to be addressed at some point. But I appreciate the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, because I think of some other communities that have not been fortunate for some form of development or haven't asked for development, and they are the way they are because of that. So thank you for that, Rep. Evslin. Members, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on HB 1286, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Cochran for the remainder of the measures on this agenda. Are there any members voting no? With reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, HB 1162 relating to motorcycle instruction permits. We'll adopt the HD1 and let's defect the effective date July 1st, 3000. Members, questions, comments, or concerns? Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on HB 1162, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any representatives voting no? Any with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. All right, members, next measure, HB 537 relating to two-wheel motorized vehicles. I will do several amendments on this bill. First of all, let's adopt the HD1. We'll do tech amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. We'll defect the effective date July 1st, 3000. I want to specify and make this applicable that the provisions in this measure will specifically apply to motorcycles. So I will be removing the language on page 6 also regarding the 15-year-old age requirement, as we have several other bills moving through the legislature that in tandem address what they're trying to accomplish. But I do want to retain and clarify the provision requiring that any individual renting or leasing a device must wear a helmet provided by the lessor or business. In concept, I believe most people that would be renting these vehicles are possibly and most likely visitors. And in the concept and good health of safety, I would like our visitors to be safe on our roadways. Seeing that, members, questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on HB 537, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any representatives voting no? Any with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, next measure, HB 387, relating to highway safety. Members will adopt the HD1. I'm going to do tech amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. And I do want to acknowledge the concerns raised by the Office of Public Defender in their testimony, and they'll note them in the committee report. But I do understand what the prosecutor's office is trying to accomplish with this measure. And I will note for the folks that are watching or even in the room that understanding the Office of the Public Defender always will take these positions, and it's not anything personal. I just think in concept they are trying to advocate for their folks that they represent, and I appreciate when both the prosecutor's office and the Office of the Public Defender come forward to provide the testimony for members to engage with. So seeing that, members, questions, comments, or concerns? Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on HB 387, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any members voting no? Any with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is
Thank
adopted.
you. And then, sorry, before I go to the next two measures, I have one more on a measure on the agenda item. So once I adjourn this hearing, I'll gavel in quickly for that one, and we can move forward with that. Okay, I actually want to take up HB 1084 and 138 and HB 1084 and HB 1387 in tandem, and I'll explain what's happening. Firstly, I want to thank all the advocates that have worked for the last several years on this measure. I want to thank the Department of Transportation for working on it also as well. And I want to thank the Office of Governor Green for making it a priority for the last 2 years. I also want to thank my predecessor, Majority Caucus Chair Todd, for first working on the measure last year as it came before the Transportation Committee. And I think from that first hearing till now, there's definitely been a lot of outreach done trying to work a lot of these measures through. And when I had the opportunity to be tasked as the House Committee Chair for Transportation, one of my priorities I always laid out from the beginning was seeing this measure through out of this committee. And when I think about the numerous stories that have been told, I like to tell the story that wasn't told today of a young boy named Kaulana Werner in Nanakuli, who was, who suffered the death due to someone who was driving under the influence. And I am reminded of that incident every day when I go home to my district, as it occurred on Farrington Highway in Nanakuli. And I think about these measures for the people who cannot speak to see them through or to support. And I think of other stories that have yet to come forward to talk about in support. But for me, that's why I've always talked about making this measure a priority. And I know when you folks come and testify, it's a lot to unpack and unravel, but I think your stories are important. And when you can tell them here at the Hawaii State Legislature to my colleagues in our committee, it reminds us of the duty that we have before us. And all that to be said, my intent is that actually regarding HB 1084, we will be deferring that measure and moving HB 1387 as the vehicle for this measure because there were the amendments made in the drafting that actually was addressing some of the concerns of HB 1084. So I want to note that HB 1084 and HB 1387 accomplish the same thing, but for the sense of duplicity, I'm going to be deferring HB 1084 and I'll be moving HB 1387. So regarding HB 1387, we're going to adopt the HD1 and we'll affect the effective date, which is July 1st, 3000. Members, questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on HB 1387, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Are there any members voting no? Any with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Seeing none, we will see no further business. We will adjourn this 9:30 a.m. hearing, and then I will shortly adjourn, call the 10 a.m. Good morning. We're coming to order, calling to order the 10 a.m. hearing on the Transportation Committee here in the House of Representatives for decision-making on a previous measure that was heard, HB 668, relating to motor vehicle insurance. My intent was to try to work on this measure more thoroughly with the Office of the Public Defender and the Prosecutor's Office to see this through. But we have yet to come to an agreement, and so my recommendation is that I will be deferring the measure for this session. But as I shared with the members during that hearing, that the state offers insurance for folks who are not actually able to get the insurance. And I think we need to work on a way to either making the program more publicly accessible or more publicly available, that people who cannot get insurance can get insured, because we have the resources. We just need to figure out a way to do it. So my intent is either to work on legislation for next year or to see if we can do something regarding a resolution. So I will be deferring that measure indefinitely, and this meeting is adjourned.